So, Ricky, how long ago did you stop
Hey, we're live. We're live.
Like, how do you answer that?
How do you answer that? Did you pack your lunch or ride the bus?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge. I'm Steve Dodge. It is March 14th. Hey, is it Pi Day? It is Pi Day and St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if that's true. Oh, anyway. So we've got a lot of stuff to go over, and we have 45 to 50 minutes to do it because this podcast is going to be one of the fastest, most action-packed, information-filled podcasts you've ever listened to or watched. If you have any comments, please feel free to put them in the YouTube chat. We'll get to them at the end. So a couple of quick things this week. First of all, I put out a Facebook poll. I put out two Facebook polls. Two versus the field is a new feature that I want to do, and I'll ask the field. We'll have some special guests here today, maybe, and we'll ask them what they think. But two versus the field. We said, would you take Ricky Wysocki or Paul McBeth versus the field? 45% of you said you'd take Ricky or Paul. 55% said you'd take the field. Just for funsies, I said, okay, would you take Simon Lizotte or James Conrad versus the field? And lo and behold, 55% said that they would take Simon or James, and only 45% would take the field. Very interesting. The number 1 and 1A players in the world, 45%. Number 4, and I don't know what Simon or James is. I don't know. They're like 4 and 10 in the world. Those guys are 55%. What an interesting turn of events we've already had this early in the season. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's definitely some fun fodder for while you're sitting at the sports bar watching the live broadcast. Speaking of which, if you want to watch the live broadcast, go to our watch parties page, find a local place to enjoy, and you can win some prizes and get some more prizes for that bar or store or club, and make it more exciting for more people to watch the sport. So with that, we're going to run through real quick Pro Tour news from the last couple of weeks. We have had a policy update. There is now a smoking ban. We're following the PDGA's smoking ban for majors and national tour events. This will now apply also to Pro Tour events. So you can go to our website, dgpt.com, click on the news feed, and you can read that policy update. Again, it's just following the PDGA policy. We think we got that one right. The image of disc golf matters. Let's make sure we present ourselves well and follow all the policies we need to follow. The next thing that we're going to say, so we have a bunch of preview articles regarding the Waco Charity Open. The Waco Charity Open starts tomorrow. It'll go live. The broadcast goes live at 4 o'clock Eastern every day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This is a 3-round tournament. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern. Tune in. Tell your friends to tune in. Let's get the numbers up. We're going to have a lot of people watching Waco, which is really exciting. We also had 3 really cool product releases this week. MVP put out I think it's a neutron atom. And if you would like to have a challenge with people in your family, try to spell neutron. Very difficult, unless you know how to spell it, and it's easier. So the MVP Atom Neutron, this is the first time that it's been released in that material, and MVP put a gorgeous stamp on it. You can go to our Facebook page or our store to see that. The other new releases this week, we are obviously releasing the Zuka cart, and again, go to our Facebook page. We have the first 100 compact Zuka carts are available through our store, and all of the money goes to support the Pro Tour. So if you want to support the Pro Tour and roll in style, please go buy that Zuka cart. And then thirdly, we just released, I guess they're called First Run, but it's the first time Discraft's ever made the ESP Glow Swirl Zone. It might be the first time they've ever made ESP Glow Swirl. So anyway, I think those 2 things are true. We only made 500 of them, and you can go to our website and buy those. And I'll say the MVP and the Zone are selling like hotcakes, and the compact Zuka carts have been picking up steam the last week. So if you want to make sure to get those limited edition things, support the Pro Tour, and I say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everybody that buys those. One other little bit of interesting news before we bring on Dixon Jowers. Dixon and I are going to have the first ever Pro Tour Talk podcast debate, and we're going to debate foot faults and whether they matter or not. And Obviously, we all know how I feel about this, and that's going to probably be the winning conversation, but we'll see. We'll see. I almost feel bad for Dixon. But he will be playing the role of foil today, and that's where we're going to go. But one other thing that did happen, I think this came out yesterday, maybe today, March 14th. Hey, that's the same day as today. This came out today. Over on Ultiworld, on their disc golf page, Addie Maxwell, who might be on the podcast next week to discuss this, she put out an article about FPO media coverage. She said that we're not doing as good a job as we should be doing. I would take a little bit of not offense. I would just have a disagreement with that. We pointed out about 6 different goals that we have throughout this season. For example, we're putting out a women's tent. We want to have more photos of the women. We want to have the women on the scoreboard. We want to have more conveniences for the women. For example, the women's tent and the and porta potties out on the course. The big one though is the media coverage, and we want to have more media coverage of the FPO field and better media coverage. Last year, I was actually doing a lot of the editing real time. And this year we have a professional editor, Terry Miller, who is doing the editing and putting it in the live broadcast. And then after the fact, he's actually putting out shot by shot coverage of the women's coverage. And from what I've seen, that has been very well received. So those 2 things are both better. And the shot by shot coverage is definitely more than we did last year. So I'd encourage you, go out and read that article on Ultiworld. One of our goals this year is to grow the women's side of the game. Addie's saying, hey, Steve, you're not doing a good enough job of it. I'd love to know what you guys think, because we really are trying to do a very good job of it. And next week, we're going to hopefully have Addie on, and we'll have a really good conversation with her about what we can do and maybe what we can all do to help grow the women's side of the game. Because no matter which side you're coming at it from, it's best to work together and make this whole thing work together. So with that, I encourage you to go read that article. And now I'm going to bring Dixon Jowers into the conversation. He will play the role of foil.
I think you will play the role of heel, I believe is how it works. Hero and heel.
Hero and heel. Wait, that would leave hero for you.
Right.
Which is that's
perfect.
We shall see.
Or appropriate, I think, is the
Let's do this a little bit so they can see your guns. Okay.
All of them.
It's harder to tell that I'm flexing looking at that. So I'm sure. Anyway, for those of you listening online, thank you.
It's captivating so far.
So we are here to discuss foot faults real quick, and then maybe we'll bring in a special guest and see if they have any other extra comments, or they could potentially be the mediator and tell us which of us have won the argument.
Okay.
So
I accept your options, your demands.
Round 2, the memorial. I think it was hole 16.
11.
11? It looked like hole 16. It wasn't the one up the hill?
No. Pretty sure I've already won the argument. You're not even familiar with the basic facts of the case. For the sake of this argument,
just to keep this thing moving along. So let's pretend it's hole 11. I'm a details guy. I don't know if you know that.
Vista? Can we agree on the park?
Yeah, I agree on the park.
Okay, all right.
And let's go ahead and say, let's pretend Ricky Wysocki has the disc. I think it's his second shot.
Okay.
And let's pretend Nico's standing off left and 2 other guys are standing off right, maybe not paying full attention.
Well, one was left, one was right.
Right.
Okay.
Who's on first?
What's on second?
All right.
Nico was left.
Third.
KJ was left.
Okay.
And
We didn't
Johnny
even
was
get
right.
to third base.
I was on third.
I don't know. So, and then Ricky's going to take his shot, and it looked like it was maybe 150 to 200 feet, and it's a pretty nice little flick, and it's super duper easy. Do we agree on that?
Probably 300 feet, and a little more difficult because there was an angle, and he was throwing out over OB. I mean, it wasn't the most simple up and down.
It looked pretty simple to me.
Right. How come you're not on that big card, by the way?
Did I mention my bum knee? Yeah, it's super bad.
And your bum arm.
That's not so good. So in my opinion, for someone who is a top player in the game, taking that shot from 1 foot back is not going to give that person a tremendous advantage.
Okay.
If he had thrown his disc 1 foot shorter, I assume you agree, he's going to nail that shot as often as he from 1 foot. Okay. It's not a big deal when you're 250 out.
Sure.
And I put an average of our differences.
Okay. That works for me.
I assume you agree.
Okay.
Okay. So bearing that in mind, what does it matter if his foot, and I understand the rules and the technical aspects of it, but in my opinion, when I'm playing a game with my brother, if you're not breaking the rules on purpose, and if you're not gaining an advantage, then there's really no, I'm okay with a small variation on the rules personally, because I understand you're not doing this on purpose and you're not gaining anything. So it really is insignificant.
Okay. Just 2 feet away from the mark, is that an advantage?
What's the situation?
Same situation.
I don't think that matters very much.
5 feet.
5 feet would matter.
Okay. So somewhere between 2 feet and 5 feet, you crossed the line.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So what if Nico says 3 feet matters, but you say 3 feet doesn't matter? This is why we need an outside arbitrator. This is why we need a rule book, because it brings objectivity to a subjective element. That's why it has to be followed. Because as the rules are laid out, and I do think people dismiss it and say, well, yeah, it's in the rule book, but does it really matter? Well, then why don't I follow my putt? Why don't I go 10 feet in front of the tee box? Why don't I break that limb in my way? Because the rules say I can't do those things.
All those seem much more egregious than this relatively minor infraction.
But relative, you can't have a rule that's based on a relative understanding of anything, because your relative is different than my relative.
That is the truth.
Right. I mean, look at our family pictures, right? I mean, so there has to be an outside standard. There has to be an arbiter besides the two people that are involved in the conflict.
I understand the point that you're making.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining tonight, guys. And we'll see you next week on the Disc Golf Pro Tour podcast
with Chick, Dixon, Jowers. It feels to me, I understand you have to stand on the tee to take a tee shot.
Okay.
And I understand that you have to, you can't break off a limb. Okay. Those seem absolutely egregious. Why does it matter if someone's 13 inches versus 12 inches? Okay. Because somebody's going to say the line that the PDGA defined it's 12 inches, or I think that's what they said. Yeah. Is that what they said?
It's 11 inches.
Okay.
Splitting hairs. You have enough problem with hairs.
Splitting
so we're not going to worry about.
Oh my God! When it rains, this is the worst. So the PDGA is defined as 11 inches, and if I'm 12 inches behind, does it really matter? It seems like it doesn't matter much, if at all.
Sure. Okay. The 1 inch in and of itself, and technically it's 30 centimeters. I'm sure there's somebody yelling and screaming. The book doesn't say 11 inches.
Well, they're probably yelling and screaming. I golf jumpa.
Yes,
so something European language.
I don't understand what that means. So the reason that it makes a difference is because if you don't have to think about where you're putting your foot, that's an advantage. You are gaining an advantage by not paying attention to the rule if you're not having to worry about it. In this particular situation, Ricky was not aware that he was foot faulting. Nico was aware. Okay. So by Ricky not having to think about that, Nico is focusing on it. Johnny and KJ were not focusing on it. So it's all elements of the game that's being played that some people are spending mental effort to focus on it, and some people are not. And that's why it has to be avoided, because you don't know so maybe he is just 6 inches out. Maybe he's doing it on purpose. Maybe he's not. And this is just generic person at this point, not talking about Ricky.
I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
I agree with your point. And the reason I agree is because you need to, it would be an advantage to not to say, okay, my disc is there and I can throw from anywhere in this, anywhere in this general area is fine. Mm-hmm. That would be a significant advantage to not even think about it.
Right.
It is also a rules infraction. There's a point, and the PDGA defined it. And then you get to that slippery slope, because obviously 40 feet back is maybe an advantage of going around something. So, and rather than have that slippery slope, you have to define it somewhere.
And if it's okay to be 4 inches outside and nobody's going to call it, what other rules am I okay with fudging?
Exactly. And
that's the whole point of a rule book, is to set out standards.
I fully agree with the point of you have to be cognizant of the rule and then you have to pay attention to the rule. And that is one extra thing your brain has to do.
Right.
And so in that regard, there actually is an advantage to not paying attention to that at all. So I actually do agree with what you're saying.
And that'll be it for the podcast this week, guys. Thank you very much for joining in.
Do you want to know while I have you here, before we bring on our extra guest, and you maybe won this argument? I'm not sure. We'll have to go back and look at the tape.
Okay.
I don't remember who you picked to win the Memorial. How did that go?
You mean fantasy?
Yeah. No. Just you and I are bet.
I picked Paul. This is probably where you got your idea for 2 versus the field, because I was doing 1 versus the field.
You clearly needed somebody else.
Well, yes, but I still stand by that was the smart money pick going into the event,
and I'll stand by the field was.
Well, and that's fine.
Right.
But I don't think it was a bad pick.
I'm just going to say steak and potatoes is what I'm looking for.
Okay. I'm sure there's a gas station around here somewhere that serves steak and a potato.
So on that, I think we're ready to bring in our special guest.
Okay.
And we're going to see. I'm going to switch chairs, and we'll let our special guest sit in here. Put him in the hot seat. All right. And we can't hear it, but a bunch of people off screen just screamed and went, "Yay!" I'm going to let my chair down a little. That's funny. I could be as tall as Ricky.
Cool. We got 3 people here.
Look at that. This is the first time ever. Last week was the first time I ever had 3 people on the podcast, and we were all over the world. And this is the first time we had 3 people ever in one area.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Start good trends.
Moving on up.
Yeah.
So Ricky, I wanted to ask you, and I thank you very much for being here.
Yeah.
We had a quick little discussion, and I was arguing that it does matter. The foot faulting does matter, and I don't remember what Dixon was arguing. Which side of the argument were you on? Do you remember?
The winning side. I believe. Side that was on.
So, in your opinion, let's just ask the straight up question. We can get into the details of the actual thing, but in your opinion, is Dixon right about this whole? Is foot faulting a significant issue?
I mean, it is. I think I'm on the border of both. I mean, so I'm not going to answer the question completely, but as a player, it's a type of thing where, like Dixon said earlier, it's some people are looking for it and some people are not. It's just some people spend their energy looking for it and some don't. So if you're in a situation like I was, where someone calls you, you're basically, not all the time, but a lot of the time, you're at the mercy of the other players.
Right. Because
a lot of times you can't actually tell if you did or not. In my case, it was a little bit more extreme, but in most cases, it's not going to be, it's not going to be 2-3 feet. It's going to be, a couple inches here and there. Right. So it's like you don't know at the time, and so you're at the mercy of the other 2 players paying attention. If they're not, then it's you can't second something if you can't see it in real time.
Right.
And a lot of times you can't.
When the PDGA first made this rule change, I personally thought it was a bad rule change, because I didn't understand the way that the rule was sometimes being utilized as an advantage, saying, oh, if someone's missing a putt, you can just foot fault them and then they can take it over if you're on the same team or something. You're rooting for someone and happen to be on the same card. And in retrospect, I actually think I've come to the other side. I actually think it was a good rule change. What is your opinion of this rule change?
I like it. I mean, and in my case, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I do like it. I think that, it gives a little bit more leeway with the box kind of thing that they've come up with. But I still think you run into the situation of, the exact, if you're, I think was it 4 inches on each side, 4 by 12 or 4 by 11?
8 by 11.
Okay.
Approximately.
So yeah, if you're 9 inches,
so the width of a disc.
It's basically like a sheet of paper behind the disc.
Okay.
It's 20 centimeters by 30 centimeters. I think pretty sure that's pretty close to 8 by 11. The sheet of paper is 8.5 by 11.
Okay.
As a top player in playing in the situations where this can possibly occur, if it's not super serious, like mine was, looking at the video and seeing afterwards, it was a lot more serious than I had known. But so a lot of times it's not going to be that serious. So it's, as a player, we're not going to, if you're, this, I know for me, if it's, just a smidge off, I'm not going to just, foot fault. Right. And even if I did, the other players probably aren't going to second it, because it's like, it's so close. It's like, obviously it depends on the player, but yeah, so I think it just still comes down, there's still a gray area there. And as far as, being an official, like you never can tell as far as, the box, whether you're in the box, if some person says you touched it, some says you didn't.
Yeah, I feel with the rule change is all they did is they moved out the area where you could fudge the numbers, basically. Instead of having to be right behind the middle of the disc, if somebody was 2 inches off, it was a foot fault. Well, now you're just 2 inches more off. And really, I don't think this is going to solve the problem, because it seemed like this was a reaction to everybody saying, there's so many foot faults happening. Somebody needs to take it serious. PDJ needs to do something about this. And so they made this larger box, I think, as in an attempt to make it so it's not as big of an issue. However, if somebody's 2 inches outside the paper, people still aren't going to call that. And so now it's just over the course of time, it's gonna start bleeding wider and wider. So, I mean, I don't know if it solved the issue. I do like, if it's seconded, I do like the immediate stroke. Because I don't think, people say, well, that could get abused. I don't think we have a pair of just people that are willing to egregiously break the rules and stroke a player. I don't think we have a whole lot of those guys running around, especially teaming up on a card in order to get a guy. I trust the integrity of the professional players to not do that sort of stuff.
And if that sort of stuff did happen, it would be very obvious, and especially at this level, and the world would just dump on them. Yeah.
I mean, now maybe this is happening on the third card of an advanced, tournament, some B tier. I don't know. I mean, because the rule applies to the lead card of Disc Golf Pro Tour event, and it applies to the 8th card in intermediate.
Right. The Hatfield brothers are attacking the McCoy.
Right. So and actually, Kevin. Coda and Kevin, that was the greatest doubles team ever, because it was the Hatfields and McCoys.
That's a good one.
So it applies to everybody, and we're just going to have to wait and see and play out the tournaments over the course of the year to see if this is an issue. I haven't heard any stories about a guy and his doubles partner on a card together and they stroke some guy and the other guy totally disagreed. I haven't heard that, and I don't expect to hear that. But it's still out there. So, I mean, we can fall off on that side. Previously, you could fall off on guys literally falling off their putt in order to save a stroke. So, I mean, you can always find advantage within the rules to bend them a little bit to benefit your score. Hopefully that's not going to happen with this.
So what you said earlier, Ricky, that you weren't aware of the rule. And I think that might be a little misnomer. I think you were aware of the rule, but there was a part of the rule you weren't aware of.
Yeah.
You were aware of the change.
Yeah.
But you weren't aware of one part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, basically with Nico calling me on the foot fault and obviously looking at the video, it was outside of that box, clearly. And at the time, whether I knew about it or not, it didn't matter. I would have had the same result because I didn't know that I could second it myself.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter. At the time, I couldn't really tell. I was walking around after I threw. I didn't really actually know if I did or not. So even if I did, I still wouldn't have seconded it because I didn't know that I could. Exactly. So it's my fault for not knowing that rule. I'm not saying that it makes it okay. It's still my fault that I didn't know the rule that I could second it. So once again, we were at the mercy of Johnny and KJ at the time being able to second it because I wouldn't have at the time if I knew the rule either way. So like I said earlier, it kind of falls in the mercy of the other two players calling it and seconding it.
Right. And so rats, I had a thought. But the other thought that I had was, do you agree it was hole 16, not hole 11?
Disagree. It's hole 11.
What do you pay attention?
Right. Well, first of all, 16 is a par 3. So I was on my second shot. You agreed on it.
For me, it was a par 4.
Okay.
16 is the giant slope from the road to the sidewalk.
That's right.
So that
just to get it to
and
that,
it's a par 3.
I tried to get it to those.
So just work through the numbers here.
This is a par 4.
This was his second shot that he was throwing 250 feet. Are you saying he got 100 feet off the box?
That's very awkward. I didn't know what he was doing there. But it's just like he's going to hit a long putt from it. It does. Watching the shot in my mind, it does look like maybe it was a different hole than 16. So maybe I'll concede that point. Also.
How gracious of you.
Changed his mind after not even seeing the video or whatever.
No, I did see the video, but I remember your shot. It was a wide flag. Where it didn't matter if you're another foot or so behind the mark.
Some would say.
And I don't say that anymore because I'm guessing that when you took that shot, you were thinking more about the shot than the placement of your foot.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a combination of things.
And I'm going to go and say that was an inadvertent advantage that you were gaining.
Yep.
So
yes. Yeah, I mean, that specific shot, it was basically what was going through my mind is I was in between a run-up and a standstill shot because, like Dixon said, it was 200, 250, 300, whatever the distance. I think it was between 250 and 300 was how far the shot was. So for me, that's a distance where I sometimes run up and sometimes stand still. So in my head, I was doing a run-up, and physically, I was just doing a standstill. So it was kind of like a combination of two. So that's why I ended up so far back. And And just to clarify why, because people are like, oh, how could you possibly do that? Like they're saying like I'm the worst person ever for doing that. But that's, if you want to know the truth, that's the truth, that I was basically in between a run up and not in a standstill, and that's why I was so far away.
So you hadn't committed to your
before I do.
That's interesting. I know as not a very good player, I sometimes do that.
Right.
But I didn't know that other humans did that. Okay. Well, so Ricky, two versus the field. I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot.
Okay.
So would you take yourself and Paul versus the field to win?
This week, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Would you also take Simon and James Conrad versus the field?
No.
Okay. It seems like you can't do both.
No.
And interestingly enough, the numbers did almost mirror each other. Or people thought 55-45 were the numbers. On both ways. So
that's cool. I like that way. That's a cool topic to talk about.
And what that means basically is 4 versus the field is almost 100%. One of you 4. Okay. So
wow.
That just using logic. I don't know what we should have. That should be the 4 versus the field should be the other poll.
Yeah. To see what the numbers spread is.
Yeah.
So I wasn't prepared for this question. However, in looking at, this is a topic we touched on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, going into Las Vegas, looking at the Disc Golf Pro Tour, Disc Golf World Tour, National Tours, and majors over the last 2 years, I believe it was, there was 49 events that fell into one of those categories. Ricky or Paul was in the top 3 of 48 out of 49.
All but one.
All but one. Wow. And the one that wasn't was Vibram.
I was going to say, because you got 4th.
And he got, and the one that they weren't in the top 3, one of them was 4th.
And Paul was 12th.
Right. So, and I want to say that it was well over half that one of the 2 of them won. So
48 out of 49 top 3.
The idea that, and it just goes down at any individual course. It may not work out for the percentages, but on the whole, you should always take Ricky and Paul against the field. Always. And it's not even close. You should always do that.
Well, the people disagree this weekend. And that to me is what makes the sport awesome, right?
Las Vegas has giant buildings because the people disagree.
That is hilarious.
True.
That's so funny.
Lots of people disagree.
So you're the bookie right now.
Does not mean that they are right. It just means that they disagree.
Speaking from a bookie's perspective, it sounds like.
Sure.
You'll take the percentages.
Lay bets.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
Yes.
That's funny.
And maybe we'll do that again this week, and we'll let people know how we did.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
he's gonna start his own Vegas.
That's right.
Slowly but surely.
2 versus the field. You'll take Ricky and Paul.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and take.
I'll take a blank check for the rest of the events of the year, assuming neither one of them is injured.
Okay.
On the whole, I promise I will come out ahead by the end of the year. I promise.
We shall see.
Any individual event, I might lose, but I promise at the end of the year, I will have more steak and potatoes in my belly than you will.
That's all because I'm buying doesn't mean you get more steak. That means you get more free steak.
Okay.
But I will say that at the events, it's not always going to be Ricky or Paul. I did that because, in my opinion, I think right now people, number one, James is known as a woods player, and number 2, Simon's coming off the win. So I wanted to play off of that emotional bond that people have with recency bias. Right. Yep. So I played off of that, and logically, you're 100% accurate.
May have your attention, please.
Hey, the library is closing.
You got normalcy bias, right?
Normalcy. That beat. Don't use the word term recency bias.
Well, it's the hot hand fallacy.
Right.
So is what it is. The guy's made 9 free throws in a row. Of course, he's going to make the 10th.
Yeah. Right.
No, if he's a 60% free throw shooter, the law of averages will work out.
Although that would have worked on the 3rd through 8th free throws. That he did get that.
Sure, but that's why. Okay, so the roulette table at Vegas used to be just a roulette table, and then they put that number board that shows the last 20 rolls.
The recency bias, absolutely.
It's the hot hand because they say, well, it's been red 10 times in a row. Of course, it's going to be black.
Right.
No, it's not. That's not the odds of the game.
It's going to be double zeros.
Yeah,
well, you're going to lose no matter what you do.
But when they put that board up, betting on roulette skyrocketed because people thought they could predict based off of the previous one.
Right.
And it doesn't work that way. So yes, Simon played great at the Memorial, and he played good here last year.
So the reason I said that was because next event, the 2 versus the field is not going to be Ricky and Paul.
Change every week.
It's going to be based on what happens and what's the developing model.
Sure.
So,
Well, I think you could always say on one side, Ricky and Paul versus the field, and then 2 other guys versus the field.
Yeah.
You could always set that up.
Yeah, and maybe we will. But if Ricky or Paul wins here, I think what we want to do is say Ricky and somebody else, and then Paul and somebody else.
Previous winner or something like that. Yeah.
We'll have to see how it goes.
The only reason that it's 55-45 right now is because people forget that Ricky and Paul are Ricky and Paul. Oh, well, this is the year of the Eagle, and Simon finally won. Oh, everybody's going to take over. No, I mean, that's not how it works right now until it happens.
That is how it works right now.
While.
It's been Eagle and Simon so far. That is how it works right now.
Right. And I think Paul and Ricky, probably would agree, had 2 bad tournaments. And they both still finished in the top 7 of both events. And both of them want to poop on their tournament performance right now. I mean, like, they are Simon and Eagle are like, man, we played great.
Right.
And the 2 best golfers in the world played terrible, and they were still within striking distance.
How often when you win a tournament, and we're way off topic here, and the library closes in 20 minutes.
Okay.
So, but how often when you win a tournament, do you go home and think to yourself, I should have won by 12? Do you often think you could have won by a lot more?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I definitely do. I mean, it just depends on the event. Some events more than others. It depends on how others are playing too. Some events I feel like, if I win by 1, it's the best. Like in Australia, me and Eagle played so good that I won by 1, but so I don't think I could have even possibly won by 12. Some events I'll win by 8, and I could have been like, oh, I could have won by 12. Yeah. So it all depends on how other people are playing and how they're pushing you, and how, like I said, that all determines whether I think I can, win by more. Sometimes it's not even a possibility based on the course and the performance of someone else. But yeah, certain events I do.
So we were talking, I guess Terry was talking to Simon and asked him about the Memorial. And Simon said, I played well, but it seemed like I got lucky, and it seemed like other people got unlucky, which was a really interesting, like I've won a handful of tournaments in my life, and I've never gone home thinking, wow, I got lucky and everybody else got unlucky. I've never thought that. Yeah, I've always gone home thinking I should have won by 4 instead of 1.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to hear Simon say that. And I guess you feel that way sometimes, and other times you think you could have done better.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it'll feel like you're playing awful for, the top players will be like, oh, wow, I didn't play very good. You won the tournament. People are like, oh, why are you so mad? Or you birdied a hole, when you threw a horrible – it feels like we threw a horrible shot because you just barely missed our shot. And we're so fine-tuned athletes that, if we miss a shot by a little bit, we're frustrated. We may have gotten up there for a putt. We may be parked because of a certain result, but we didn't actually get the result out of our hand that we were looking for. Right. So that's what people don't understand is, like, oh, you're just, you're just being a dick because you didn't throw the right shot, but you got right under the basket. But it's like we want to throw the same shot every time that we can control. If it bounces off 2-3 trees, that's not consistent. Right. So that's a kind of a variable that a lot of people don't understand. It's like, yeah, you sometimes you win a tournament and it feels great and you kill everyone. Sometimes you win by 1 and it feels like you played awful. Sometimes you win by 10 and you feel like you played great. So it's just so the variance is different as far as the emotion when you win. There's so many different ways to win, and that's what really is great about it is you can be an athlete. There's so many different ways to do it, and everyone's different.
Right.
Okay, so I want to ask you about a particular hole that you were upset with. If you can have the perspective now that I'm far enough away from it to appreciate it.
Okay.
Hole 5 at the Beast, final round last year.
Okay.
You tried to go over the top because at this point you needed like eagle birdie in order to tie. Tried to go over the top. You went OB and you moved up about 100 feet. If you guys haven't seen this, go look at the coverage from last year. I think it's the best shot of the year. You got up and down from 80 feet off the box.
Yeah.
It's an impossible up and down.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
The best golfers in the world looked at that and said, "That's not happening."
Yeah.
But you were upset. You threw that sky roll. Right. You landed in bounds. You hit a 50-footer or so for the 4, and we're upset.
Yeah, I mean,
can you appreciate now?
Oh, wait a minute.
How ridiculous
he was upset about the 4,
right? Because he couldn't win the tournament.
I said you were upset about. Oh, that's okay. Because you were in a different mindset.
He was trying to get the eagle.
Oh, thank you.
It didn't work. Okay, now you have to settle for third last year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I got right around. Yeah.
So, like, can you appreciate now that was a ridiculous up and down?
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm not having in the heat of the moment, yeah, I definitely look back and some people post videos or comments. And I'm like, wow, I really did that. That's crazy. And but at the time I was, I failed. I was trying to throw a shot. It failed. I was trying to win the tournament. I still felt like if I executed perfectly, I could do that. And as an athlete that I feel like I can throw shots like that and I can do it. So when I didn't do it, that's when I was mad. So I wasn't worried about the result. Of course, I was, deep down, I was glad I threw the good shot, but I was still frustrated about the shot that I didn't capitalize on before that. So the heat of the moment, I was, that's why I was mad. I was mad because I didn't capitalize on the shot. I wasn't mad that I threw it way over the trees and threw a great shot to get a par save. I was mad because I didn't have a chance to win. I was basically, it was over for me, and that's why I was mad.
So are you going to try the sky roller off the box this year?
Right? Instead of 80 feet off? Yeah. Well, no, absolutely not. I learned the easy way. Let's say it that way, because I got a par. I learned the easy way.
Yeah. So in closing, I have one final question for you. I don't know if Dixon has one more or not. But a lot was made about Eagle and Simon going to the Alps or somewhere and just running up and down the mountain 20 times each day and only eating protein or only eating vegetables, whichever they wanted. So they did a lot of training, and people focused on that and said, that's why they're going to do great. I assume, like me, you took the winter and just ate ice cream and gained 10 pounds really easily and didn't do anything. And that's why you had a slow start so far.
Absolutely not. Nope.
Yeah. But you're disagreeing with me again.
Yeah, right. Am I supposed to do that? I'm on your show. Is that right?
We got a recency bias right
Yeah,
here.
okay.
Because I've already disagreed with you so many times, I'm going to do it again.
Do it again. So what did you do over the winter?
I worked with Seth from Disc Golf Strong. He's actually
fantastic guy.
He's worked with that NHL players, basically the top level athletes of their sport, right. And so he knows what he's doing. He knows a lot of different methods to train and fine tune athletes, like he did when he was working for the NHL. So he's got probably the best background of anyone I've ever worked with as a trainer. And so I did a lot of we actually use an app to where he'll send certain workouts, and I'll do them, and every day he'll refresh them. But it's a lot of ground workouts where you're holding a certain exercise where, like, you're doing band workouts, but you're also working out with your core. So you're holding. It's a lot with your feet. So basically, a lot of the workouts are on the ground. So you're holding, stabilizing your core while also doing a lat pull, kind of with the band. So you're stabilizing on the ground with your knees. So you're holding this and doing this at the same time. So your abs are engaging, and you're also working out this part. So, and I was doing a lot of band resistance exercises. Simon and Eagle were doing a little bit different exercises. They were doing like balancing and which is okay. I mean, and not knocking it, but it's just a different style of exercise, right. Totally different. I mean, there's different. I don't know if that applies. There's different. I don't want to slam their type of exercise because obviously they did good. So I'm gonna stop talking.
It worked for them.
So it was great for what they were looking for. But yeah, so it's a little bit different. But like I said, he gave me exercises. I did them. And I did that for about 2 or 3 months, and a lot of them were specific to disc golf. So that's what I like, certain movements with resistance bands, and a lot of the muscles, that fast twitch muscles, using the resistance bands to build that up. And so there's a lot of different things that I did like that. Did a lot of cardio, running, of course, and playing, but I did a lot more probably the most off-season workouts. And just because I had 2 bad tournaments doesn't mean it's all went to crap. It happens. And so, I'm still glad that I did it. And I think it'll still pay off throughout the whole season.
Of course. And the reason I asked the question, obviously I knew you didn't just eat ice cream.
Yeah, right. No, I know.
the reason I asked the question is just to point out that the sport has significantly evolved in the last 3 to 5 years, where instead of taking the winter off legitimately, and then like in baseball in the 70s, when spring training was to get you back in shape. Yeah. And now everybody's just in shape all the time because we're elite athletes, not we.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe you.
Right.
Yeah. We are elite athletes, and we need to be in shape all the time. We can't afford to try to get back in shape a month before the season. And that's your time to strengthen and improve. And you're just leaving everybody else farther and farther behind if they don't do that. And that for me is exciting because we're taking the sport more seriously.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the off season is, basically the start of a different season as a workout training season. There's a disc golf season and there's a training season. Right. The off season is the training part. I don't do as much training physically in the off during the season because I practice so much and I don't want to be sore and all that. But I still do light stuff, but I don't do nearly as much as in the winter. The winter is where you I feel like you build your bases and then get ready for the season.
Do you work with Seth at Disc Golf Strong throughout the year during the season?
Yeah, I mean he's at a lot of the tournaments. I use a lot of his stretching routines and methods before rounds. He has an actual video. You can check him out on YouTube. Yeah, he's got. I'm sure everyone's seen him by now, but he's got stretching routines where you specific to disc golf, working out. He's got over your head. I'm sure the halos, everyone sees all these people doing all these weird exercises, but there's a method to the madness. Absolutely. And he's got it down. I feel really comfortable with him. He's very knowledgeable. He's not just a trainer that tells you to do an exercise. He tells you what it does and how, like I was able to explain to you a certain exercise by holding stabilizing your core while doing that. I would have never been able to tell you that. I would have just done the exercise and been called it a day.
Exactly.
So he's very knowledgeable. He tells you what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it pertains to disc golf and helps what it's going to do to benefit you. So he's very knowledgeable. He's going to be at a lot of events. So if you guys want to check him out, he's really open to help a lot of people.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Great to have you on.
Thanks, Dixon. Yep.
So I'm going to close the show by answering some questions. I'll go to see if there were any questions, and I'll ask you to stick because they might be relevant to you. Cool. And let's see how this goes. Let me try to pull that up. What is the address for YouTube?
Something like that.
All right, everybody. So that was Dixon Jowers, who learned a little lesson about arguing with me. And we also we saw Ricky Wysocki, the current world champion, two-time world champion, current, like in a row.
Yep.
That's just amazing.
Yep.
Current historian.
What are the odds of that?
I know.
Like even if you're really good, that's still unlikely.
Yeah.
Or is
normalcy bias worked that time.
It did work
that time, and I won again.
Let's see if we can keep that going.
Yep.
Someone wrote the champ. That's the last comment here,
okay,
and
cool.
I'm on the screen.
Oh, nice.
So
you're the champ of the tournament. Tournament directing team.
I'm not going to go that far. People have seen me in action. They know that's not true. All right. So reading through these comments right here, I'm just saying sports is still sports. No one calls themselves on fouls in any sport. Disc golf nerd, I'm going to go ahead and just say I disagree with you. And I would bet that because of what just happened, I personally believe we're going to see more people being willing to say, yes, I did do that. I believe Ricky, he's nodding up and down. Is that a nod? I don't nod and shake, get me confused. Yeah. So he's nodding his head. Yes. I think part of the great thing about disc golf is we have a great disc golf culture, and people would much rather be on the right side of history and be good in culture, in our culture, than gain a one-stroke advantage. And plus, if I didn't call myself on that, and I knew I could, and at this point, I think we all know that we can, it's been a great learning experience. That would totally destroy my karma for the rest of the round. So, because I would be thinking about that. So disc golf nerd, I'm going to go ahead and adamantly disagree with you. And maybe you can come on next week and be my foil, just like Dixon was. Chasing the bees. I think Ricky is fibbing. I think Ricky is fibbing about not knowing in the moment. I agree with disc golf nerd. No one's going to call it on themselves. Chasing the bees, I guess you're going to have to come on and argue with Ricky about that. Because I talked to Ricky right after the event, and he did not know the rule at that time. And I do believe what he's saying is real. So this is going to be fun. I'm just going to disagree with every comment on here.
Welcome to the internet.
I hope somebody says that we have plenty of FPO coverage, because I'll disagree with that too. People make mistakes, but have the integrity to admit a mistake. I think actually Ricky has admitted that he made the mistake, and we're all good on that. We got 15 minutes. Interesting that last year's winner, this is from Disc Golf Guy, Big Germ, isn't even in the conversation as a repeat winner. 100% correct, Terry. That is very interesting, and I expect Big Germ to make more noise than anybody else is expecting. I look for him to make an easy top 10 finish, hopefully top 3. I want to see him on the podium. Look at the tape and tell me I'm lying. I don't know what that's in reference to. Alexander hates roulette.
You're lying. Yeah, you're lying. Just disagree.
Alexander hates roulette. There we go. Somebody's guarding the door. Okay, Vince, that is you. XFactor. That's probably in regards to Paul and Ricky. Do they have the XFactor?
Oh, wow.
Is that the it factor? Like they just know how to close out tournaments?
Oh. I don't think it's an X factor. I think it's experience from winning most of the events over the last
All right. So look, I love the fact that there's a lot of comments on here, but what I'm going to say is next week, and I should start the podcast with this. Next week, if you have a question, finish it with a question mark, and I'll stop on that. So that's what I'm going to do going forward. Will Nico second a 30-second violation on himself? Wait, do you have to second that?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Wait, Ricky doesn't know that rule.
Yeah. No, I think that it's first one's a courtesy, I believe. And then after that is when
yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. So somebody could call it, and that's a very funny joke, I suppose.
I found my numbers. 37 out of the 49 events that fell into that category were won by Ricky or Paul.
Were won by them.
And
48 out of 49 were in top three.
So 76% of the time, one of them won. Okay. One of the highest level events over the last 3 years.
Now, can I say that that's just a recency bias of yours because that's just what happened over the last couple of years?
So you can say that if you want.
Exactly. Yeah. At some point, it becomes
like saying black. It's going to be black. Remember that again, right?
At some point, it becomes real.
No, but it's not the same.
In 2017, Paul was outside of the top 2 4 times.
Okay.
So you don't even have to say Ricky and Paul. You can just say Paul.
You could just say
only
Paul.
4 of those times, and all 4 of those times he was in the top 2 when Paul was not.
So the other thing that I'll say, and we're getting ready to close her down. Last week I did see a couple of people asked about Vibram, and they wanted me to comment on Vibram's exodus from the sport. And I don't know much more than many other people. I know that Vibram at the beginning of the season was not, or the end of last season, was not interested in sponsoring the Vibram Open again. They were not interested in spending more money in the Disc Golf Pro Tour. And my guess is it seems obvious at that point that they were retracting and they knew that this might come up. So if you are a rubberhead, go out there and collect some rubber. There's lots of discs still available. And in my opinion, they make some pretty great discs. The lace, the first time I threw the lace and I got it over 400 feet, I was very, very excited. So that made my day. I hadn't been able to do that for 4 or 5 years. So they've got a really nice distance driver. I'll say that. It's a shame that it's not going to be produced anymore. If anybody has any specific comments about Vibram and wants me to address them on next week's Pro Tour Talk, shoot me an email, steven@dgpt.com, and I'll be happy to address them directly. But as far as them leaving the game, I'm sorry that they did it. They're a really, really big company. They're probably bigger than the sport of disc golf combined. That's how big Vibram is. And for them to be in disc golf, it was just such a small aspect of their business. They really couldn't concentrate on it because, when the Australian government says we need 3 million pair of shoes, that's going to take precedence. So anyway, that is right. I would say, okay, we'll make those, and the 1,000 summits you want are going to be put on hold.
I'm with you.
Okay.
I'd like to hear the story of why the Australian government wanted 3 million pairs.
I don't know exactly how many shoes they needed, but it was soles they needed, but it was a lot. It was a lot more than I was selling summits. I'll say that much. So anyway, I'm sorry to the guy whose summit order got delayed that week, or probably a month. Anyway, thank you all for watching. And please, tomorrow, the Waco Charity Open starts at 4 o'clock Eastern, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It starts at 4 Eastern every day. What's that?
Is it Sunday too or no?
No, the Sunday is the AMs.
All right.
Sunday's the AMs. We get to watch AMs. You don't get to watch AMs unless you're local. So, and if you're anywhere in the area, come on down because Friday night we have a huge party on the suspension bridge. Best players party of the year last year. Let's see if they can do it again. Congrats to Ryan and Joey for being Pro Tour TDs of the year. Thank you very much for watching. Let's keep growing the sport.